What's up, guys? Welcome back to Making Finances Sexy. It is me, your host, Rose Short, aka the Red Queen. Come down the rabbit hole with me. I'm a realtor here in the Phoenix Valley, as well as CEO of Chronicle Luxury and a financial consultant. It is my mission to help you fire your boss, build multiple streams of income without breaking the bank, and get that time freedom back that everybody wants. And with me, of course, is the wonderful and talented Miss Jessica Lay.
Yeah. Hey, and welcome to Making Finances Sexy, guys. My name is Jessica Lay, your Rent Rave-own realtor and certified instructor with the company 101 Financial, right here in the Valley of the Sun, making it my mission to assist you moving out of renting and into home ownership. No matter your situation, I'm ready to be your personal finance coach and first-time home buyer specialist.
Woo-woo!
Yeah. And today we're talking about emergency funds and how to build one.
They're so sexy.
Heck yeah. And they're so important. Like, would you agree? We don't know when an emergency is going to happen, and we don't know how costly the emergency is going to be until it happens. So
100%.
So extremely important, guys, that you understand what an emergency fund is and build one for yourself, because we live in a world of uncertainty and anything can happen tomorrow.
Yeah, and it's kind of fortuitous that we're doing this podcast episode now because, obviously we plan our podcast ahead, but in the last week, I've seen a lot of people reporting layoffs. And, that's hard to plan for.
Yep. And with payments coming back due, like deferred student loans, people are starting to struggle a little bit more and losing any cash reserves, if they have any, or whatever of their paychecks is left to go towards these new student loan payments or whatever it is.
Yeah. That's why I always say the principle, right? Pay yourself first. Like, even if that's $5-10 a paycheck, like, you should still be putting something aside, because sometimes that extra $100 or $200, like, you don't think anything of it. And then, suddenly you have to register your car, and that $200 is really helpful.
Yep, absolutely. I read on an article the other day. So there's about 56% of Americans say that they can't cover even $1,000 emergency, let alone something more catastrophic. So just having an emergency fund, it'll help cover any unexpected expenses and keep you afloat while you unexpectedly lose a revenue stream, which is also why we always talk about the importance of people should not just rely on their one job, because what if you were to lose that tomorrow? Heaven forbid, we don't want that for anybody, but if it does happen, what kind of position would that put you in? And you just really need to sit down and think about it.
Yeah, that's why I'm a huge proponent of multiple income streams. And it's so funny because, my dad's generation, like that age group, is always laughing at me and like kind of chiding me about, oh yeah, your multiple income streams. And it cracks me up because, if one goes down because the program stops or it's not doing well, or like one of the programs I use right now where everyone's having a hard time getting paid, I've got 2 other income streams that are very consistent that are still bringing in the cash. So while I'm fighting with that one, I've still got my bills covered. And that's why I say, build multiple income streams. It just makes everything so much less stressful.
Yeah. It worked back then, like for our parents' time, and even before them, the one job thing was great and everything. But we look at prices and the economy and where it's at. And also we went through something like COVID, which put a lot of people out of work and lost a lot of companies that went under. Like, a lot of jobs have disappeared. We do have more jobs like restaurant work and fast food work, but people aren't wanting to work in these industries because they don't pay enough, and because there are very rude customers that show up to establishments and things. So I am a huge advocate to figure out a way to have multiple streams of income, and be careful if you are relying on your 9-to-5.
Yeah. And there are some people who are putting their ego aside and going like, okay, you know what? McDonald's is paying $19 an hour. I'll work there for a little bit until I find something better. And that's absolutely fine. And that is part of the problem that we've seen with our generation, is the whole ego of like, well, I'm above working fast food. But a lot of that too is, again, COVID, a lot of people were told that they weren't essential. essential, sorry. And that is true for a number of restaurants. Like a number of restaurants were still considered essential, but a number of restaurants and food service and whatnot struggled during COVID. And now we're seeing corporate mergers, which we knew were coming because of the recession. And with corporate mergers come layoffs. And so LinkedIn just reported they were laying off like 50,000 people. One of the mortgage companies that we know very well, they just got bought by somebody else. There's probably gonna be layoffs there. Like it's happening. And no one could plan for COVID. You could kind of plan for this if you were studying economics and kind of understood what a recession was going to cause and like what corporate mergers meant. But if you're not versed in that, you're not going to see it coming either. Like LinkedIn, a lot of the employees there didn't see it coming. So it just happens and you have to be prepared.
Yep, definitely. So yeah, being prepared for an emergency not only gives you less to handle in a difficult moment, but also may prevent you from going into debt. You might end up paying more for the expenses if you're not prepared, and that can negatively impact your credit score. So preparing for the twists and turns that life throws our way, emergency funds, savings accounts that you only touch when you need to pay for large unexpected expenses can keep a bad situation becoming a more impossible one. Have you been in any like big situations that you, I don't know, were scared or like happy that you were prepared for?
So I was never really an advocate for like 401ks, but the company I used to work for had them. So I was like, okay. And when they decided they no longer needed me after I'd bought a house and moved out to a whole new city, that instead of rolling over that 401k, they just paid it out. And that was a lifesaver because I didn't have a savings account at that point. I'd emptied everything to buy my house. So that was nice. And I was really glad that I was using the principle of paying myself first to build that 401k. Now my emergency fund's not as big as I'd like it to be, but it's getting there. So, it is there. But how, in financial 101 and whatnot, how do you teach people, like, what is your advice to people who need to start building one, but just don't think they have it in the budget?
So definitely when we come across students that don't really have that positive cash flow and things like that, that basically is our first step, is how can we get this student to a positive cash flow so then they can start putting money aside for their emergency fund or savings account. It does feel impossible for some, but honestly, it's possible for everybody. Really just hankering down, creating your picture, seeing your money, expenses, and income laid out nicely so we can really strategize and figure out where we can cut back on at least a little bit, what things can they cut out of their lives, like subscriptions, whatever. We also strategize ways to make extra income, if it's, door dashing on the weekends or getting a little part-time job. We don't want to cause burnout in anybody, but there are lots of ways where we can either A, cut back on expenses, or B, increase our income. And that's the first step. Nice.
See, I use the principle of if I don't see it, then it doesn't matter. So instead of receiving that money and then later moving it to a separate bank account, if you have the ability to direct deposit, I have it auto direct deposit into a different account that I don't even look at, because then I'm not accidentally spending it because it's in my bills account, but I know it's getting put away and it's building its thing. The other thing that I like to do, that I know a lot of people use tax returns as like, oh, it's a bonus for the year. But if you look at your tax returns as money that's owed, but that you didn't need anyway, you can put that into a savings account when you get it too. And I think that's where a lot of people need to make that switch mentally, is instead of getting that, tax refund and going and splurging and spending it, put it aside and start building that way.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree. That is another great way. Tax returns too. Definitely don't recommend blowing those off. It is a powerful tool when you do get money back to either just put it away in a savings account or a investment account that is safe and growing, like a Roth IRA or S&P.
Yeah.
So a well-maintained emergency fund, it ensures that you have enough money to cover anywhere from 3 months to a year of essential expenses. Of course, it won't happen overnight, so it might be good to start by just saving $1,000 or whatever you feel is doable for you. And can you name off what a financial emergency might be? Like what counts as a financial emergency or what you think it is?
I mean, big medical expenses, get in a car wreck and, break your leg.
Yeah.
Or, your car, for us, like the power steering goes out. That's a $2,000 bill that we weren't expecting.
Yeah.
Things like that. Or, the roof starts leaking if you own a home, right?
Yep.
There's so many things that could cause it.
Yep. Unexpected trips. Kalani just had to take a trip to Maui because of his grandfather passing away. So many things that come up in our lives. And I just want the audience to really listen and think about the times where these things may have happened to them, and just emergency funds are very, very important to have.
Yeah. And you've got to treat them as such too, right? You can't like look at it as, oh, well, an emergency hasn't happened in 6 months and I really want to buy this thing, so I'm going to use that money. Because inevitably, as soon as you use it, something comes up. So in life insurance, we always talk about, we hope that people don't need to use their policy, but statistically, 1 out of every 12 people that get a policy end up needing to cash in on it in some way in the first year and a half. That's a massive statistic.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's happened with one of the people that I got a policy for. They discovered that they were very sick and it likely would have caused them not to be able to get life insurance. But because we got them life insurance before that happened, they're covered. And because of the life insurance they have, if it turns into a, here's your expiration date from the doctor thing, they can actually pull a lot of that money to make the end of their life a lot easier, a lot better. So, do I want her to get to that point? No, absolutely not. But am I glad she's covered? Yes.
Yep. And everyone deserves that safety net.
Yeah,
absolutely. So that's a good point if you are thinking about starting to save for your emergency fund, is you got to overcome the obstacles and challenges, which is like budgeting and starting to build your savings up and reminding yourself why you start saving in the first place to keep you motivated is a really good piece of advice that I can give. Just visualizing or thinking about, don't terrify yourself, but just thinking about emergencies that you would really dislike happening to you. And that kind of keeps me like, okay, yes, I need to save this money and not touch it just in case I get in another car crash, like whatever.
Yeah.
Whatever it is to just keep you motivated and on track to saving up for that emergency.
Yeah, it has so many aspects of what we talk about. Having a strong why is so important. And I always like to equate it to there's an episode of The Simpsons where they ask why there's no baby pictures of Maggie. And it's because Homer had quit his job and then they discovered that she's pregnant with Maggie. And so he groveled to get his job back. And there's a theme on his wall that says, "Don't forget this is your home," or something like that. Yeah. And he puts her pictures up in a way that says like, "Do it for her," or something like that. But that's what gets him through is like, he goes to work and he's like, okay, yeah, this is why I put up with this. This is why I'm here. And it's so important with entrepreneurs, with stuff like this, budgeting, etc., to really have it defined and reminded daily why you're doing something. How big is your why? Is it big enough to get past those pain points? And if it's not, then it's not. But if it is a big enough why, like you'll stick to it.
Exactly. And I'm really happy you brought up entrepreneurship, because while anyone can experience an emergency funds are particularly important if you own your own business. So, or if you work in the gig economy. But unexpected emergencies do not just cost money, they cost time. So if you're a business owner, you may not have sick days or paid time off, or I'm pretty sure you wouldn't. But every hour you're not working is an hour where you're not earning. So if an emergency keeps you off the job, you're paying a double penalty in a sense. So definitely, to our entrepreneurs and business owners out there, if you don't have an emergency fund, then you need to get one soon.
Mm-hmm. And that's where having an income stream that's passive income comes in handy.
Absolutely.
Or, can be done from a computer in the comfort of your home.
Yes. And that's what Rose is here for, to help you.
Yes.
Awesome. Yeah, so when you're responsible for running your own business, a few unexpected days off could mean angry clients and could also cause like a major hit to your revenue stream. Avoiding these situations just takes a little planning and saving. That's all.
For sure. Yeah, you really have to walk a fine line of the money you're investing back into the company and the money that you're putting aside for stuff like that. It's difficult to define because everyone defines it differently, and it's not a conversation that entrepreneurs typically want to have. But again, it goes back to being honest with yourself and being willing to make those growth changes and growth decisions, and suck it up, because it's going to suck for the first couple of years before it gets to the point where everyone's like, oh, it must be nice, or oh, I want your life.
Right. Exactly.
So.
It does take a lot to get there, and personal financial growth and business financial growth, it's not easy. They're both difficult, but yeah, you get what you put into it either way. So it's always, in the end, it's on you and what you do with it.
100%.
So another tip, if you're thinking about building your emergency fund or have started building your emergency fund, if you don't have many, and you should be super grateful if you don't have too many emergencies that happen to you. It always depends on the person and where you're located and things like that. If you keep up the progress of building that savings for a few years, then the emergency fund can honestly start looking like a great vacation fund. So you just want to be very careful and definitely check up on your emergency fund if you're not paying any attention to it, if that's the way you like to save, which me and you probably are similar, where if I have a savings account, I can't look at it or I'm going to want to spend it. So checking on your emergency fund is great, but if you see it starting to look like a vacation, just be very careful. And I'm not saying don't take that vacation, because I love taking vacations and going to music festivals and things, but make sure you still have that emergency fund, the amount you need set aside for just in case.
Yeah.
And then every time you tap into your emergency fund, make sure you're replenishing it. Don't want to just keep tapping, and then you have nothing left. That's not sexy.
Yeah, it's really easy to fall into that trap of like, well, I've already started spending it, so let me just, whatever.
Yeah.
But, if you have to get into it, then you have to get into it. That doesn't mean you have to roll the spot. It's kind of like if you're on a diet and then you have that piece of cake and you're like, well, there goes all my work for 6 months. I guess I'm done. Like, it doesn't make sense. You can recover.
Yep, exactly. So I guess I just want to conclude it. We don't live in a stable world. People get sick or injured, cars get stolen, broken, and the economy just takes a turn, or your company department gets laid off. None of us know what comes next. So if you have an emergency fund, you can navigate these situations without sweating over your account statements or falling into debt. That is the main goal, because debt is ugly and we don't want that.
Bad debt. Bad debt is ugly.
Bad debt is ugly and we don't want that.
Yes. There is good debt.
Mm-hmm. Yep. 101 Financial, we use debt all the time.
Exactly. Yeah. The rich use debt and leverage. So
Yeah.
I guess next week we're going to talk about how do you budget and save when you have pets. I get this a lot from people that have pets. They're like, how do you do it? Like, how did you save money? And I was like, oh, for a long time I saved money because I didn't have pets. Now I got 4 dogs, but there are ways to raise your fur babies or your were children, as I call them, without breaking the bank.
Awesome. Can't wait. Love our fur babies.
Yes.
Yeah. See you next week.
Woo. Bye, guys.